Hi, my name is Cindy. I'm 73 years old, married to Stan with a wonderful supportive family. I'm also a very grateful 8-year survivor of stage 4 ovarian cancer. If I only knew then what I know now, we've all probably said that at one time or another. I think about it frequently. If I'd known the fact that my mother and grandmother both had breast cancer, put me at risk for ovarian cancer, I would have been much more concerned when I started experiencing really strange symptoms. My abdomen was growing larger and larger, terrible bloating. I was becoming very short of breath. And amazingly, for someone that lost 65 pounds when I was 30 and fought to keep my weight off all my life, all of a sudden I couldn't eat. I didn't want to eat, and yet my weight was going up. Calls to my doctor weren't taken seriously. She told me in a bored voice to try Gas-X. I tried Gas-X for a couple of weeks, and when it didn't work, I called her back and said something's terribly wrong with me. Her exact answer was, I don't know what to tell you. She didn't even ask to see me. So my journey with ovarian cancer began because something was terribly wrong. Those symptoms are classic for ovarian cancer. Eventually I made a point to see my doctor. She took one look at me and sent me to a GI doctor who eventually diagnosed me as having very advanced stage 4 ovarian cancer. In fact, by that point I was so sick I was put in the hospital immediately. My liver and kidneys were failing and 2 huge tumors were blocking my bowel. I was in such bad shape that they put me on a food tube 24/7. The oncologist that was brought in also started me on chemo to try to reduce the fluid and the tumors. I was way too sick for surgery at that time. The fluid and the tumors were causing my unusual weight gain. My husband and I decided, though, for some crazy reason, that we were going to beat this disease, no tears. I don't know why we felt that way, but it gave us a feeling of peace and determination. I've also always had a sense of humor, so I decided to name the tumors after people I didn't like. I told them they'd be the size of raisins when I was through with them. That began a very rough time, though. I lost 40 pounds. Of course, I went bald. I didn't mind that so much. But at one point, I was in such bad shape that my husband went out and bought a baby monitor. If I was upstairs in bed and needed him, I only had to say his name, and he would rush up to help me. My Stan was there for me every step of the way. I think the journey was probably much harder on him, as he felt so helpless at times. And I wasn't always the best patient. I wanted to be independent. But eventually I learned I needed to accept his help and make it a lot easier on him. I thank him every day, I still do, for being the best caregiver ever. After 3 months of chemo, I was able to go off the food tube. The fluid in my abdomen was almost gone, and the tumors had been reduced by 50%. About that time, I had to have a blood transfusion. I don't know whose blood I got, but the next day my appetite came roaring back. And all I could talk about, this is an absolute true story, were 2 for 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box. A week later, I had my tacos and started loving to eat again. I was then turned over to a gynecologic oncologist who did my surgery and took over my treatment. The surgery took over 7 hours. He said he found cancer in everything. I then started a very intensive chemo treatment program, including chemo applied directly to the surgery site, as well as chemo through the veins. After 2 full years of chemo, I was given a scan. Although I somehow felt I would beat this awful disease, I thought the scan would show something and we would take care of it. Well, it came back, no cancer anywhere. So I finally cried, and I still get very emotional. I'm still dancing with Ned, no evidence of disease. And that baby monitor, it was eventually used by our granddaughter to listen to our great-granddaughter, who was born in 2011. When I look back at all I had to go through, those words kick in. If I'd only known then what I know now, I would have been in my doctor's office asking for tests that might detect ovarian cancer. With the symptoms I had, the risk factors in my family, I would have become my own strong advocate. And if my brother only knew that having breast and ovarian cancer in the family meant he was at risk for colon cancer, he would have been more responsible about getting a colonoscopy when his doctors first suggested it. He was eventually diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. He's had treatment and is doing okay. Last year, however, was probably the toughest one of all. My 52-year-old daughter was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she was found after hysterectomy for suspected uterine cancer that it was precancerous. My daughter went through 7 surgeries, countless treatments and procedures, and is currently cancer-free and doing well. But I came to realize that right there in my family are all 4 of the risk factors: breast, ovarian, uterine, and colon cancer. I now find myself very involved helping other women go through the cancer journey. I find my story gives a lot of them hope for their own situations. I'm also aware that so many of the wonderful women I know are going through recurrences. Their fight is ongoing and their courage takes my breath away. We've also lost so many of our sisters to this fight over the last few years. But because of the incredible medical professionals and courageous women I've met along the way, I have been inspired to get the word out about the symptoms and risk factors for ovarian cancer. I decided if I didn't know the symptoms and risk factors, perhaps others don't either. So I hope by telling my story, those that hear it can share it with all the women in their lives, and maybe lives will be saved, or at least the cancer could be detected early so women won't have to go through what I went through. So that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share my story with you today. Thank you.